So the other day I was watching this video showing a metadata-driven approach to create database objects, and I wanted to demonstrate what that would look like if you were using dbt. There's a demo at the end of that video. You can see how they did it with that framework. Let's look at how we would do this with dbt in Datacoves. So the first thing that we want to do is look at what the data looks like, and here is the file. I found the file here and the CSV file, and this is what the file looks like. So we have these columns here. Now let's go get the raw data so that we can get the URL and import this data. So just to make sure that we see that there's no sleight of hand here. We don't have anything in my schema here, and there's no golf data here in the raw database. So now let's go and load this data. So here we're using Airbyte. First we select the file connector, and we will just give this a name of golf. We'll paste in that URL that we copied earlier. It's a CSV file. We'll give the data set the name golf as well, and this is all we need to do. Now we can save this, and Airbyte will validate that the URL is reachable and this is a good valid source, and this will finish in a second here. There we go. And now we can actually go and connect this to our destination. So I already have a pre-configured Snowflake destination, and now Airbyte is going and making sure that, figuring out what the columns are. And now we just have to select when we want to refresh this. I'm going to set it to manual because we normally would use Airflow to orchestrate the load. And then we will load this data as raw. So we don't want any transformations to this data. So there it is. This is all we need to do. Now we can launch the job. So this will take a few minutes. So while this runs, let's just give a quick overview of what Datacoves is all about. So Datacoves is a tool where we have a turnkey solution for the modern data stack, where we have these different tools here by dbt. We host a dbt documentation, and we help with the CI/CD process as well. We have Airflow, and we have Superset. But if you don't want to use any of these tools, you have other tools, that's fine. We don't need to you don't need to use us for Superset. If you rather use Looker, or if you rather use Fivetran instead of Airbyte, that's perfectly fine. So let's go check if the load completed. And there it is. It succeeded. It loaded all of these records. So now that we have the data loaded, let's go and show that the data was indeed loaded in Snowflake. And there it is. Let's preview this data. And that's what it looks like. So when Airbyte loads the data, it loads it into a JSON column, a variant column in Snowflake. This makes it more resilient. So if new columns are added or columns are removed, the data will still load. And normally you would add tests in the dbt side to make sure that you have what you need. But we've loaded that data. So now that the data is loaded, let's go and start transforming it. So here we have a dbt project, and the models folder is empty. So let's look at that. There's nothing in here. And if we look back at the original repository, this is a data model that they had. And there's one interesting thing here. There's a column there that's a date, and then all of these columns were probably hashed together to create a key. So let's do the same thing in dbt. The first thing that we want to do is run this open source utility we created called dbt-coves. This will generate the initial source YAML and SQL files that we need. So what this command will do is inspect what's in Snowflake and list all the tables that we have available to us. And there's the table that we want. It's the golf table. So we select that, and then here it detects that we have a JSON variant column, so it offers to flatten it for us. And there's the two files that it created. So there's the YAML file, and here's the SQL file. So let's get rid of these because we don't want this in our model. Let's change the data type here, and let's use the dbt-utils surrogate key macro to create the primary key, as we saw in that data model. So here we go. We have the surrogate key. We will now need to populate it with all the columns. So since we're using Visual Studio Code, we have the power of multi-cursor. So I'll select all of the aliases, the columns names here, and paste it in here. Use the multi-cursor again. This macro needs all of these columns to be strings. So I will put quotes around all of these. We need a comma, and get rid of that last comma since we don't need it after I format it here. There we go. And finally, we'll give it an alias. And that's all we need to do. So now let's preview it. Let's see what this would look like if it gets materialized. So right now nothing has been materialized, but we will compile this and run this against Snowflake. And we should see here in a second what the data will look like. And there it is. That's what the view will look like. So now we can actually run this, and this will take a few seconds, but eventually we'll see that it compiles and runs in Snowflake. Here we're using the dbt power user extension, and we extended it so that we could show these results. There we see dbt running the model, and it's successful. Let's go look in Snowflake. There is that new view, and we can preview it. And there's our transformed data. So this is all I had to show, but you can see how simple that was with dbt and Datacoves. And if you want to learn more about dbt-coves, you can find it in our GitHub repo. And if you want to learn more about Datacoves, just visit us at datacoves.com. Thanks.